Alrighty, so today I'm going to do the first of a couple of video I'm going to pre-record before my 5-day trip to Hawaii, because even though when I'm down there in 5 days, I'm still going to produce some content on my YouTube channel. And in this pre-recorded video, we are going to do the annual hot seat index that we do every single season before the regular season begin, where we put every single head coach in the hot seat index to see whether or not if they're in this top tier where they're indeed going to be in the hot seat coming into the season and throughout. If pressure can start to build that things could go wrong. And if there could go either way with the way that, it's very unknown whether or not if they are truly safe for the rest of the season, and that maybe they could still get fired if things goes wrong. And then we get to the fourth tier where we think that most likely they would be safe at least for this season. And then the fifth tier is pretty much that, yeah, there's no way that they're going to be fired this season. And most of those head coaches that gets into that fifth tier are usually head coach that been with the team for a long time and has had some success, and also a team that have had some recent success that, the fan base are not just going to turn on them straight away if resort doesn't go well, because of the fact that there's going to be a bit of a honeymoon period. But that being said, we're going to start with the first head coach, and I'm not going to go alphabetical order. And we'll start off with the Houston Dynamo head coach, or the Houston Dynamo new head coach, that is Ben Olsen. And I think this is right about a good place to put Ben Olsen there. I mean, obviously I know he's going to have to do a lot to win over the fans. I mean, when he was announced as the head coach of the Houston Dynamo, a lot of Dynamo fans were not happy about that, and rightfully so, because I'm pretty sure they hear the warning for a lot of DC fans about the way that Ben Olsen put this negative kind of tactics, and have really just have some very MLS 1.0 kind of tactics that clearly don't work in the modern day, in the MLS 3.0 era that we've seen right now in the league. But yeah, if he of course can change that and maybe continue to improve this team to progress the rebuild, then I think he should be fine. But there's no doubt that he's going to have to do that, because if things can go really wrong, and if this team doesn't show any progress in this deep rebuild, or they regress to a way where they finish dead last in the standings again, I don't see Ben Olsen lasting very long. And that is also going to put pressure on the front office too, because so far, as much as the front office has tried their best to spend on players, it's one thing to spend money on players, but it's another to get it right. And especially in terms of the head coaching position, they have not done a good job in terms of it. If Ben Olsen is not going to be answered, like, that's now two head coach that they got it wrong, first with Paulo Nagamura, and now potentially could be Ben Olsen. But now at number 2 with Nico Estevez. And again, I'm going to go with initial, because, it would take too long for me to write the full name. For Nico Estevez, I think they should be safe. Or he should be safe at least for the end of the season. In fact, I would say maybe he would probably be right around here. In fact, I'll probably put him a little bit lower, because I think, he's done a great job with FC Dallas so far, has really rejuvenated this team to a way where they're starting to become one of the better team in the Western Conference too, despite the fact that they also been kind of flying under the radar a lot. A lot of people don't know that FC Dallas is a decent team, and I think he's going to continue to get this team, hopefully finally conquer the one thing that they've been wanting to do for the past couple of years, and that is getting past the second round and not get eliminated by either a Cascadia team, or in the case of last season, by their fellow Texas team. But now we go to Bob Bradley. For Bob Bradley, it's kind of interesting, because I can definitely see that he could be on a hot seat heading into this season, because I think this is his second season in charge for TFC, and knowing the resources that TFC has built, and the roster that they have built themselves in the offseason, and also finally address the one issue that they desperately need to address, which is the back line. I think there's no excuse for Bob Bradley to not guide this team to at least be a playoff contender. I think playoffs is definitely a bare minimum for TFC, and knowing the fact that the last couple of years they have fallen into hard time of missing the playoffs back-to-back years, I think there could be a case that you could say that there's pressure on Bob Bradley to produce, and that if they do miss the playoffs once again, then I won't be surprised if TFC would decide to put the chopping block. But if they do make it to the playoffs and maybe even go deep into it, I think Bob Bradley's job should clearly be safe. And then we go to Pat Nolan. Oh yeah, Pat Nolan is definitely right here in a way where, he's been a miracle worker for FC Cincinnati. I mean, there is no way in the world I can see him being fired this season. Even if maybe I will say that if FC Cincinnati do suffer a bit of regression, what Pat Nolan has done to the Cincinnati team is just nothing short of a miracle, and even the fan base have been all in terms of how he has single-handedly transformed a team that has been a bottom feeder for the past couple of years and winning wooden spoon to now all of a sudden become a legitimate threat in the Eastern Conference. But now we go to Josh Wolf. For Josh Wolf, I think he should be safe. And again, it was not long ago in the expansion season where I definitely heard some Los Verdes fans that were not happy about Josh Wolf, and even just a minority of Los Verdes fans even want him to be fired. And I just never understand that, because look, it happens to a team in the expansion season. You're not going to always have a team that's going to be world beaters like what we see with Atlanta United and LAFC. And what Josh Wolf have done, I think he's done a good job with Austin FC, especially with the way that, he has really guided this team to be a very entertaining team to watch. And when you're an entertaining team to watch, and not only the fact that you're winning, you're gonna appeal to the fan base. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of Austin fans are very happy of what Josh Wolf is doing, and that they're hoping that is going to continue for this upcoming season, and that he's going to be at least safe for this season. And then moving on to Oscar Pereira. You know what? I think Oscar Pereira, there is a legitimate case that I think he could potentially be on the hot seat, and I think it's the same case I would say with Bob Bradley, where with TFC kind of making some big move in the past couple of transfer window. Orlando City has been very aggressive this offseason. Like they're taking an approach similar to what they have done in the past, signing some players that they hope that can finally fit the mold, and especially adding pieces both on the attack, the midfield, and in the defensive area, that it's just getting to a point where there's no excuses for Oscar Pereira to not guide this team to have a deep playoff run. I mean, I think it's up to the point where playoffs is not something that Orlando City are going to say that it's just a bare minimum. It's something that they need to at least win a couple of games in the playoffs. And I will say that I think maybe the reason why I haven't put Oscar Pereira as high as up here in the hot seat is because at least he did win that U.S. Open Cup, and maybe that could at least give Orlando City fans some feeling that, hey, at least they won a trophy under Oscar Pereira, and that's something that no Orlando City head coach has done, albeit they're only in, I think, the 8th year in their existence. But yeah, there is definitely pressure for Oscar Pereira to do well, and especially, there's definitely some disgruntled with a lot of Orlando City fans with the way that Oscar Pereira has kind of changed his tactics and have not really get the best out of this team, at least in last season. This is where he's going to be under pressure this year, where you have the talent to do so, and that you have to get it right, or else he could be definitely under pressure of potentially getting fired from this team. But now we look at Vanni Sartini. Yeah, I think Vanni Sartini should be safe. Actually, let me change that. That's not a U. It's actually a VS. I mean, again, Vanni Sartini, one of the more well-loved head coach in the league, especially for their fan base. I mean, every Whitecaps fan would say that Sartini is probably their best head coach that they had for a very long time. Albeit, even though I know last year it didn't quite work out for them, they came oh so close of making the playoffs. And again, when you gain some trust in the fan base, that could be used in terms of at least get yourself being safe at the job, even if you're not performing at a rate that they are. And that, I think for Sartini, hopefully he'll get this team not dig themselves in a deep hole, because the way that they've been playing under Sartini, I noticed that they have played a really good job in the second half this season. And that's good that you want to do well in the second half of the season. But now it's all about not digging yourself in a hole in the first place, and that's what Vanni Sartini really struggled in the first half of the season, where he just couldn't get this team to be like where they were 2 years ago in the second half season, where Sartini was just kind of a cult hero in the Whitecaps fan base. But now we go to Nick Cushing. For Nick Cushing, this is very interesting, because with NYCFC, we know head coaches don't last with that team very long. I mean, even when we saw Ronnie Delia a couple of years ago looked like he was going to maybe last for a bit after that MLS Cup run. In the middle of the season, he basically decided return to Europe, and we don't know if that's going to be the same case with Nick Cushing. And especially, I know obviously this team is going to go through a bit of a retool or a rebuild with the way that they definitely lost a lot of good quality this off season, but I'm pretty sure that's not something that NYCFC fans want to hear. They want to see this team still have that high expectation of making the playoffs and do well and compete in the Eastern Conference. Even they lost a lot of talent, and that if they aren't able to do well, then yeah, they will definitely call out their head coach. And we kind of saw the same thing with Ronny Delia. I mean, when NYCFC was struggling, Ronny Delia was under a lot of heat, especially even doing that MLS Cup run when they were struggling, and how we even, I think there was one game they decided to put a Ronny Delia out kind of banner, and yeah, that I wonder whoever decided had that idea of throwing a Ronny Delia out banner at Yankee Stadium. I wonder what they had to say after they saw their team winning MLS Cup. I mean, you just simply can't say that, I take back of what I said earlier in the season and maybe now celebrate, because sometimes you gotta eat your words. But that's kind of the thing with NYCFC fans. They expect nothing but excellence for their team, and if things doesn't go well, then I think Nick Cushing could be under the hot seat. And then we go to Robin Fraser. And for Robin Fraser, again, this is another head coach that I think is very well loved within its fan base. A lot of Rapids fans love Robin Fraser, and rightfully so. I think he's probably the best head coach that the Rapids has had for a very, very long time, and it's a guy that I don't think he is in any way in any trouble of being in the hot seat. Especially, I even said that when he was able to guide that Rapids team to a couple of playoff appearances, that is nothing short of a miracle, because the Rapids have been a team that has been a bottom feeder for many years, and once Robin Fraser came in, he really have changed the culture of this team, and I don't expect him to be in any shape to be out of the job. In fact, I think I probably should have put him a little bit lower on this, to a point where I think I would say that his job is pretty much secure. Then we go to Wayne Rooney. Yeah, Wayne Rooney I think is going to be right up here in the hot seat. And the reason why I say he's in the hot seat is because, DC, they're kind of in an all-in-year situation. I mean, with all the moves that they made in the offseason, and with the way that Wayne Rooney is also on a one-year contract, I mean, this is it. This is the time where this season will dictate the tale whether or not if DC United didn't make the good decision of hiring Wayne Rooney, and that this season will really tell whether or not if Wayne Rooney can propel this team back to a team that can be I wouldn't say an MLS Cup contender, because I think that's a little bit too extreme to say, but just being a regular playoff contender. Because if not, I think he's gone. I don't think he's going to last. I think DC is going to quickly move on, and I even said before in the season preview, if things go wrong again for this DC team, I expect they just completely go for a tear down and just kind of nuke this project, and that they're going to try to start from scratch and begin stage one of this deep rebuild. And this is why, if you're a DC fan, I mean, there's got to be some concern with the way that, yes, they made a lot of moves this off season, but a lot of these, it's kind of feel like a very boom and bust kind of situation. And I think boom and bust also is a perfect way to describe DC United this season. This could either work out well, where they could be a contender in the playoffs, or it can go very badly and could get them once again finished dead last in the Eastern Conference, and Wayne Rooney probably would be fired from this team in the middle of the year. But then we go to Bruce Arena. Now, what's interesting about Bruce Arena is that I have heard about him potentially retiring from coaching, and we kind of heard about that last year, and that last year was supposed to be the year where the Revs were going to redeem themselves after suffering that first round exit, or a second round exit, because they had a bye in that season where they had that record-breaking season, winning the Supporters Shield. But yeah, last season obviously it didn't turn out to be the case, and that for this season we'll see whether or not if it is going to be the case again, or they're going to once again get themselves back on track of being that MLS Cup contender, and especially again for Bruce Arena, time is running short for him. Like he says that he is thinking about retiring soon, and that again, this is why I kind of don't want to put Bruce Arena in the hot seat, because I don't think the refs are gonna fire him. If Bruce Arena is gonna leave New England, he's probably going to leave because he wants to step down or decide to walk away from coaching. So yeah, again, this is one that I'll just say it can go either way, and that if he can't get this team to at least be close to be a MLS Cup contender, maybe this might be the year he walks away from the game. But now moving on to Jim Kern. Yeah, this is pretty easy. I don't really need to explain too much about Jim Kern and why his job is pretty much secure. Like, head and shoulder the best head coach in this league right now. I mean, it's been proven with the way that he's been winning multiple head coach of the year award for the past couple of seasons. And yeah, in general, Jim Kern, his job is definitely safe for next year and beyond. And then we go to Christian Lattanzio. I think for Christian Lattanzio, I think his job should be safe. Again, what he did during his interim role, I think it has given a lot of Charlotte fans a lot of hope that he can guide this team to be a playoff contender. And again, there's definitely that sense that this team can look like the team with that Austin FC was heading into the second year, where there was some promise showing in their expansion season that they can make a good jump. Now, I don't expect Charlotte to make a huge leap like what we saw with Austin FC last season, all the way into the Western Conference Final and finishing second in the West. But I expect this team to be competitive, and under Christian Lattanzio, I would say that he actually had done a better job than what Miguel Angel Ramirez did during his short time before he got fired. That Lattanzio's got the best out of every player that he has, and now he has a much better team to work with. It's going to be interesting to see how he's going to guide this Charlotte team, potentially be a team that could be a playoff contender this year. And then we move on to Ezra Henriksen. I think Ezra Henriksen is definitely up here in terms of him being in the hot seat. And I know he is definitely a person that is well loved in the Fire fan base too. But again, just like what I said about DC United, this is a pivotal year for the Chicago Fire, because I think if they get this one wrong again for this upcoming season, where they show no progress of potentially be a playoff contender, it's going to be a complete teardown again. And I think this also means that Ezra Henriksen could potentially be fired. Their GM Greg Hitz could be fired, and that again, it just feels like they had to get it right this year. And if they don't get it right, we're gonna see the same cycle that we saw them back in 2021, which is just a complete tear down whatsoever. And I would say that, unfortunately for the Fire, unlike where DC United, where there at least is some piece that kind of makes sense, when I look at this Fire team, it's hard to imagine that bringing pretty much almost the same team that didn't make it to the playoffs last season and didn't really add too much pieces into it, and especially still have issue in that number 9 position, and maybe in the defense too, that there's a legitimate question of how is this team going to be decent and kind of almost an all-in push before, if it doesn't work well, they tear it down again. So I feel sorry for the position that Ezra Henriksen find himself in, but I guess maybe that's what he knew. He knew that was kind of the case when he took this job, and that, again, I think if it doesn't work out for them, I don't think Ezra Henriksen will, and the GM Greg Hitz probably will be there when they go through a teardown once again. But now moving to Peter Vermes. I feel like for Peter Vermes, he started to get a little bit higher onto this list. Before, I always put him right here below because, as the longest active head coach in the league, you would expect Peter Vermes to have his job completely secure. But last year was really the first year where I definitely heard some Sporting KC fans show their displeasure toward Peter Vermes, and some have even go as far as saying Vermes out and don't want him to be there. But obviously, that run that they had in the latter part of the second half of the season definitely kind of saved his job and kind of quiet down those minority fans that want him to be fired for this team. And I imagine he'll probably be safe, at least for this season. Again, he's been there for so long, and that Even though I know the tactics that he has used in the last couple years started to kind of be a little bit outdated, and not to mention his philosophy has really changed in the last couple of years. I mean, I remember Peter Vermes. He's kind of always been a defensive head coach, where he is always a guy that will always have the Sporting KC team to be a lockdown defense, one of the best defense in the league, and also score enough goals to win games. And that's a great recipe to have if you want to go to a deep run. But recently, it's been the opposite. It's been this team has been a much more entertaining team to watch, but at a cost because of the defense have just been really, really bad. And I thought back in 2019 when I first saw that, I thought maybe that was an outlier, but I'm starting to see that that's kind of the case recently, where it's weird to see now Peter Vermes' team have not been very good defensively when for a long time during his tenure, at least in the first decade of his tenure, his team always tends to be a very solid the defensive team. So yeah, I think Peter Vermes should be safe, even if Sporting KC doesn't go through a good season. I mean, I'm assuming they're gonna bounce back, especially with the weapons that they have in their disposal. But now we move on to Brian Schmetzer. Yeah, Brian Schmetzer is gonna be here. Obviously, it's always unfortunate that when I put the initial of Brian Schmetzer, it's BS there, but I guess it is. But what's not BS is the fact that the Seattle Sounders should bounce back this season. Now, I know they lost that FIFA Club World Cup game, and it was a disappointing result. But like I said, in that game against Al Ahly, I didn't think they played bad in that game, and that game felt like a very typical game for a MLS team in preseason mode against a team that is in mid-season, something that we've seen before in CCL before, and that I expect the Sounders team should be much better. And that, again, Brian Schmetzer, he's a guy that I don't think he ever need to buy a coffee in Seattle ever again, because he's has really cemented himself to be a legendary player and now a head coach for the Sounders team for a very long time. But now we move on into Luchi Gonzalez, who just recently hired from the Quakes. I think for Luchi Gonzalez, his job should be safe, and I really hope that the Quakes will give Luchi Gonzalez at least a couple of years to work with, because when I look at the Quakes, and I'm gonna mention it again when I do the season preview, there's definitely a sense that they're starting building an identity to themselves, and the identity that they built themselves is clearly trying to do something similar to what the Philadelphia Union is doing. Trust that they're going to produce a good academy, and I think the Quakes Academy is definitely up and coming. I mean, you don't have an up and coming academy and a decent one if they didn't make a documentary about you before. And that, I think the Quakes Academy is definitely flying under the radar as one of the best in the league, and they also are started to try to produce some really good talented player out their academy too. I mean, K-Cal probably is a great example of it, but I'm also excited to see guys like Nico Tisquez and even one of the more talented player coming out of the academy that I could see him to be very decent in Cruz Medina and down the line. That, yeah, this team, I think could be doing the Union way, where they produce some good players out of the academy, but also making some decent signing in the offseason and bring some good veteran presence that would just fit this team, even if they're not spending a lot of money for it. And I think a good example of that is the fact that when they got Carlos Grazo this offseason, I think that is a home run signing for the Quakes in a way where it will absolutely improve this team and kind of bring me more optimism that, I don't expect Luchi Gonzalez to get this team right to the playoffs. Like, my expectation of the Quakes will always be very low, and especially after the season that they finished last year and the fiasco that is going on, they can't go any lower than what they did last year. And that, even as a pessimistic Quakes fan, I do have some small hope that things are going to be better, and they're starting to build that identity and that culture that they're going to be like the Union started to become a decent team. And that, in the first year, if Luchi Gonzalez can get this team to be a playoff team, there's no doubt that his job would be safe. And even if he doesn't get this team to the playoffs, at least if there is some shown of promise that this rebuild and this new identity that Luchi Gonzalez want to shape in. Which again, I think when the Quakes decided to hire Luchi Gonzalez, I think he was probably the perfect man to do this job, knowing what he's done with FC Dallas. I think this is a good job for him to take. And I expect that he's definitely going to do some good thing, and he's definitely going to be safe for this season. I mean, that's one thing I think the Quakes would want to have, which is some head coach to have some stability, because, as much as Matias Almeida for the past couple of years was kind of like the longest head coaching reign before we had a couple of head coaching carousel that's going on with the Quakes, you knew his style was not sustainable. I feel like what Luchi Gonzalez brings to the table and what the Quakes, in terms of the identity that they bring to the table, I feel like that could be withstand for a couple of years, and especially with the same way that they trying to do what the Union has done, and the Union has shown repeatedly that they can, that this identity and this belief of believing in your academy and be smart in terms of signing the right players can really get yourself to really be easily be one of the top team and the top contender in your respective conference. But now, moving on into my other team, Adrian Heath. So, again, Adrian Heath is definitely a guy that, if you mention his name and you want to use that as a debate question of whether or not if he's doing a good job with Minnesota United or not, I'm pretty sure Loons fans are going to spend like at least 5 hour debating about it, because there's going to be some part of the Loons fan base that hates him and want him to be out. I mean, the Heath out crowd obviously has been growing momentum every time this team underachieve, and then there's also his believer that things are going to turn around. Now, for me, I'm always tend to want to stick into the middle, because I think there is definitely some case that I can understand why the Heath out crowd are angry about the way that Adrian Heath is not getting the best out of his team, but at the same time, I can also understand why he's still the head coach of this team. I mean, he has brought some stability to this team to a point where this team is a regular playoff team. But again, that goes back to the Heath out argument, the fact that it's great that they're a regular playoff team, but they're just not good enough in terms of competing for MLS Cup, and that, as I said before, could be just as bad as just missing the playoffs in general, because you're kind of in a purgatory stage where you're good enough in terms of making the playoffs, but not good enough in terms of competing for MLS Cup. And that, for Adrian Heath, I mean, not all of them is kind of his fault, because, when you look at some of the signings that the Loons have made, there's been some kind of questionable ones, especially at the back. But again, I think he's going to always remain a guy that I would say that he's going to be kind of right around this range where it can really go either way. I mean, if this team does start to have a bad season, then I can understand why maybe the Loons might be thinking about firing him, and especially the Heath out crowd, who's already loud, even when the team as soon as they suffer a bit of a bad kind of run like what we saw in the latter part of last season, they're going to get louder if this team once again struggled to a point where they were like in the first two seasons, which is a bottom feeder in the Western Conference. But then we go to Wilfried Nancy with Columbus. Yeah, for Wilfried Nancy, I think his job should be safe. And again, he's done a great job with Montreal, and obviously decided to move on to another team because of the disagreement he had with the Montreal front office, and walking to now a job with Columbus. And again, I think this is a perfect fit with the way that we know Wilfried Nancy has got the best of that Montreal team that had some decent talent. And when you look at this Columbus team, I would say that this Columbus team might have had more a better talent than on paper than what I see from Montreal. I mean, and again, if Wilfried Nancy can get the best out of that Montreal team that has less talent than Columbus, I can't wait to see what he can do with this Columbus team. And this is also the reason why I said before in the season preview, this is probably the best signing or hiring that is not actually a player base. This could be something that single-handedly changed the luck of the Columbus Crew and can make this team to be like what they are last season before the 75th minute hit, which is a team that could do well in the Eastern Conference. But now we go to Phil Neville. Remember when I say Phil Neville was on the hot seat? Yeah, Phil Neville has really proven a lot of people wrong, and has really proven even me wrong with the way that, you know, I was never a big Phil Neville believer, and I thought he was going to be fired. And the same goes with Inter Miami fans. But what he has done recently has definitely made a lot of people eat their words, and certainly made me eat my words in terms of talk about he was potentially going to be fired before the first season. And not only the fact that he didn't get fired in the first season, he didn't even get fired in the second season too. In fact, he's getting to a point where I think you can safely say that, you know, I think there are still going to be some naysayer too, and there's time where maybe Miami fans might not be happy with the way how Phil Neville coached the team. But there's no doubt that I think he has done a better job than what everybody expected him to do, and especially lasting in his role. Like, I even said that he was supposed to be the first head coach to be fired when he was first hired in 2021, and not only the fact that isn't the case, and like I said, he's still here, and I have a feeling he could still be here, unless if Inter Miami suffer a really bad regression, and maybe once again we're gonna hear the people that just simply hate Phil Neville being the head coach of Inter Miami, just kind of make the argument that this is the reason why we probably should have fired him back in the first season, or even back in last season. But now we go to Gonzalo Pineda. Yeah, Gonzalo Pineda is going to be right up next to Wayne Rooney's name. He's definitely in the hot seat, and that's kind of the case whenever I mention Atlanta United head coach. But I think especially this year, with the way that, you know, Garth Lagerwey is there, and, you know, I know Garth Lagerwey is a person that come from the Seattle Sounders, which is the same case for Gonzalo Pineda, and you think that they would have a good relationship being in the same club. I don't know if that's going to be the case, and especially, you know, we've seen Atlanta United head coach, they don't stay very, very long, and especially just with so much expectation, you got to say from the Five Stripe fans that this team should be a regular playoff contender, and actually playoffs is kind of the bare minimum for this team. This team should regularly be an MLS Cup contender, and should be the class of the Eastern Conference. That, yeah, again, I think there's a lot of pressure on Gonzalo Pineda to really guide this team to be a playoff contender too, and that's, again, just the bare minimum. And I even said before, even their GM Carlos Bocanegra, there's a lot of pressure on him too, because he is praying the fact that this team is going to be much better for this upcoming season, because if it doesn't go as well, then, you know, the only reason why I think Bocanegra still has a job is because it feels like Darren Eales really trusted him. But now Darren Eales is no longer there, and Garth Lagerwey is now in charge. I'm pretty sure Lagerwey is, if he see that this team is not doing well, he will not hesitate in terms of firing Carlos Bocanegra, and a guy that, again, has been definitely one of the more hated person in the Atlanta United team. And the same can definitely go with Gonzalo Pineda, and especially with the way that, you know, a lot of Atlanta United fans are still very pissed off about Josef Martinez leaving the team, and that I'm pretty sure if they had to put the blame game, it's definitely going to be solely on the front office, and especially with Gonzalo Pineda. And that, yeah, again, you know, there's going to be a lot of heat that both of those men is going to face for this upcoming season. But because this is a head coach hot seat index and not a GM hot seat index, I'll just say in this case, Gonzalo Pineda, you know, he's definitely going to be under the hot seat this year. But now we move on to Greg Vanney. Yeah, I think for Greg Vanney, he's going to be there. And again, similar to Atlanta United fans, Galaxy fans definitely have some high expectation that they expect from their team. And especially with the way that when you look at this Galaxy team, and maybe this is kind of the first time in a while where there's actually belief that this team can be decent this year. You know, there's gonna be a lot of people expecting this team to not only make it to the playoffs as a bare minimum, but be an MLS Cup contender. And also, especially after seeing their intercity rival get an MLS Cup, and that they definitely are going to be talking a lot of smack whenever El Tráfico does come place. There's only one thing the Galaxy need to do to kind of silence those kind of smack talk, which is for them to win MLS Cup. And again, when they brought in Greg Vanney, that was what they were supposed to hope for, and that they hope that he's going to do the same magic that he did with TFC. And then so far, you know, it's been kind of slower than usual, but maybe we'll start seeing him get this team to a decent form. Especially, I feel like Greg Vanney is kind of also a guy where if you give him the talent to work with, he's gonna do well in it. And now he is given the talent to work with, and now it's all about whether or not if he can once again do what he did with TFC, which is now guide this team to be an MLS Cup contender out of the West. Because if he can't do so, oh boy, you better believe a lot of Galaxy fans want Vanney out. I mean, I've been hearing Vanney out kind of a lot, especially last year when things weren't doing so well until the second half of the season, and I think it's going to be the same case again if things start to go badly for the Galaxy. But now we move on to Hernan Losada. You know, I feel like for Hernan Losada, again, I feel like he's going to be high up in the list, and again, it's a lot to do with just the fact that, you know, the fan base, they didn't really feel, they're still kind of feeling the after effect of seeing Wilfried Nancy left the team, and that, you know, a lot of Montreal fans love Wilfried Nancy and the job that he has done, and that it's unfortunate to see the situation that he has with the front office, which is another example of why Montreal fans really hated the ownership and really hated the Saputo ownership of the team. And now they decided to get Hernan Losada, a guy that, again, yeah, we all know what happened during his time with DC United. Decided to do the Gabriel Heinze kind of treatment on those DC player, and eventually that didn't last. And we'll see whether if he's going to do the same thing with this Montreal team, because if he's going to do the same thing to this Montreal team, you know, these players are not going to play for him, and that, you know, hopefully he'll learn from that mistake. And again, this is a chance for him to learn from him, but it's also a fact that he needs to get this team to at least be decent. I mean, I know Montreal fans will expect this team to suffer a bit of a regression, especially with a lot of key pieces that they lost this offseason. But this team should not be suffering a regression to a point where it looked like the old Montreal team, which is a team that just kind of ran out of steam in the second half of the season and miss out of the playoffs barely, because it feels like they're back in that doldrum that they fit. And that, again, I know a lot of people don't think that Hernan Losada is the future for this Montreal team, and that, again, that's also maybe one of the reasons why I also put him very high in the hot seat index, because when you don't win, when you have to win over your fans, yeah, you're going to definitely be in the hot seat straight away. But then we go to Gary Smith. You know, for Gary Smith, I know that there could be a case that he could be saved for this season, but again, you know, it just feels like there are started to be a little bit more discontent between Nashville fans because of the way that they're kind of starting to look like Minnesota, where they're good enough in terms of making it in the playoffs, but they're just not good enough when playoff time comes, and they lose a couple of key games. And also, there are some people that are kind of annoying in terms of some of the tactics that Gary Smith has used, where I think teams are starting to figure it out a little bit, where as long as you give Nashville the ball, Nashville is going to have to find a way to break teams down, and more times or not, the tactics that Gary Smith put in just doesn't quite work out. And that, again, if this season, if they don't do very well and they start to suffer a bit of a regression, then again, there's going to be some of the Nashville fans. You know, I know Nashville so far in their short time in their franchise history, I don't think they have ever missed the playoffs, but yeah, there's going to be that discontent that's going to start happening, and that Gary Smith could easily find himself right up here in terms of the pressure can build if things go wrong, and that he could potentially get himself fired from the job, even though he's done a great job in terms of what he has built of this Nashville team from the beginning. But then we go to Gerhard Struber. Again, this is interesting with Gerhard Struber because, you know, if you're a Red Bulls fan, I mean, I don't know if some of them really like the way that Gerhard Struber is coaching this team, because it feels very similar to some of the previous Red Bulls head coach, where they're able to get them good enough in terms of making the playoffs, but then that's about it. And that, you know, again, it kind of doesn't help the fact that Gerhard Struber is basically copy and paste the same tactics that we've seen previous Red Bulls head coach have done, which is just decide to play the press and play those the young players, which is not a bad tactics to do. But when it comes to playoff time, maybe that doesn't always work out, and especially with the way that the Red Bulls academy and the pipeline is starting to drying up a little bit. There isn't as more well-known kind of academy player coming out of it as we've seen in a couple of years ago. Again, that's why maybe the Red Bulls find themselves in this horrible situation where they're just stuck in purgatory of being good enough to make it to the playoffs, but not good enough to compete, and that they'll probably think that maybe that may be the reason why Gareth Stuber might not be the right man for them to get over the hump and actually finally able to maybe make an MLS Cup run or so, and for which I think that's kind of unrealistic, because when you look at the roster that they have, I mean, adding Dante Vincent that they just recently will definitely help that, but I think there's still a long way in terms of trying to compete for some of the best team in the Eastern Conference. But now we go to Giovanni Savarese. And actually, you know what? For Gareth Stuber, I gotta put the other one, because I just realized there's two head coach that has the GS initial, and this is gonna be the same case for Giovanni Savarese. Yeah, I feel that Giovanni Savarese, you might be surprised that I put him a little bit high on this list, but I do think that, there are definitely some pressure that could be grow on Savarese hand, and especially, I feel like last year, the only reason why maybe he wasn't getting as much pressure is mainly the fact that, that whole scandal situation off the field has really kind of overshadowed of how the Timbers did not play very well last season, and that, as much as I know Savarese has done a good job in terms of getting this team to have a good second half run and have a second half resurgence to get themselves high in the standings, they simply cannot keep doing that and expect that's the way for them to compete for MLS Cup. So I think there's definitely that pressure on Savarese to get this team well, and that, again, when you look at this team, they're a team that has the potential to be an MLS Cup contender, as it is the case with Cascadia team. But if this team does miss the playoffs once again, which I don't think the Timbers have missed the playoffs back-to-back year in a very long time, I think Savarese could potentially face the axe, and especially there's even though I think I have here some minority Timbers fans that have shown their frustration on Savarese recently, and that I think maybe the honeymoon period of him doing well for the first couple of years is starting to wear off to a point where, yeah, the pressure maybe is starting to build on Savarese, where if he can't get this Timbers team to once again make a deep playoff run, or even make it to the playoffs in general, he could potentially be axed from the job. But then we go to Pablo Mascherani. Yeah, I think Pablo Mascherani should be safe. I mean, again, Pablo Mascherani is another guy that I think he has proven a lot of people, including myself, wrong. The fact that he's been a decent head coach, and for a guy that has worked with a team that doesn't really have too much talent, but still is able to get the best out of the team, there's no doubt that I think that's a sign of a very good head coach, and that there's no doubt that RSL is going to retain him, and that he is at least going to be safe for this season. Although, again, it can change if things start to go badly for this team, and especially with the way that this team theoretically should be better than last season with some of the upgrades that they made. I think now that you could say that, depending on how the season goes, maybe his hot seat index meter will go a little bit higher if the team isn't performing at the rate that they hope that RSL can be. But for now, I think he's done a great job with RSL, and I don't think he's in trouble whatsoever to potentially get fired anytime soon. And then we go to Steve Cherundolo. Yeah, Steve Cherundolo is going to be right here. Again, fresh off an MLS Cup win. I don't remember a head coach being fired the very next year after winning MLS Cup. Like, probably the closest one I can remember is Caleb Porter with the Portland Timbers back in 2015, but that was at the end of the year when he decided to resign. So, yeah, it's pretty clear that LAFC fans have that honeymoon period of the fact that Steve Cherundolo is able to get them a trophy. And again, he's done a really good job in terms of what he's done with LAFC. And I know there's that argument, the fact that, well, anybody can get the best of this LAFC team, because they're just on paper one of the most stacked team, if not the most stacked team in the league. But like I said before, I have seen before where on paper you can see a team that should be making the playoffs, but if you don't get the right head coach into the job, it can turns out to be an underachieving season, and that's just not the case for Steve Cherundolo, where he's done a good job in terms of not only implementing his tactics to this team to work well, but also just not kind of overthink it, just rely on your high end talent to basically guide you to success. And yeah, again, I think Steve Cherundolo has done a good job with LAFC, and I think he's also another guy that I think has proven a lot of people, including myself, wrong. The fact that when he first arrived with LAFC, there was a lot of uncertainty whether or not if he actually is the right guy after Bob Bradley left this team. And then finally, we move on to the last head coach, and he's the head coach of the team, of the expansion team that is St. Louis City. And, you know, for Bradley Carnell, I think he should be safe this year. I think, you know, I know last year we did see Miguel Angel Ramirez got fired in the first couple of months in Charlotte expansion season, but a lot of that has to simply down to the fact that Miguel Angel Ramirez was basically having a war with the front office from the get-go, and that doesn't seem like it's the case right now for Bradley Carnell. And of course, if you minus also what happened with FC Cincinnati when they fired Alan Koch after just 10 games because of how bad things have gone, I don't think this is going to be the same case, and especially for expansion team. They're not expected to be good right off the bat, and teams know this, and they will give the leeway to their head coach about that. And I would say that's the same case for Bradley Carnell. I think he's going to be given time at least to the end of this season and see how this team goes, and then he's going to make some improvement heading into next season of what he learned from this expansion season. So yeah, again, I think he should be safe at least to the end of the season, and that again, unless if he decided to do what Miguel Angel Ramirez did last season, piss off the St. Louis front office, or just have a ridiculously bad run like Alan Koch has. Even though I still kind of question that one too, because I know Alan Koch was maybe a little bit out of his depth in terms of being an MLS head coach, but I didn't think he was deserved to be just fired after 10 games. I feel like that was a little bit harsh on FC Cincinnati part, because we have seen expansion teams start up poorly, but as the season goes along, things are going to be better, and who knows, maybe if Alan Koch would eventually figure things out, and if he is given at least a transfer window to fix this team problem from the start up, maybe he probably wouldn't be fired that season, or at least maybe he'll be with this team for the next couple of seasons, or even if things did actually work well for FC Cincinnati and not for them to go through a disastrous stretch, he might still be the head coach of FC Cincinnati right now. So yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at the hot seat index and putting all the head coach in the hot seat index. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and let me know in the comments below if I put some of your team's head coach a little bit too high or a little bit too low in the hot seat index. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.